let me read what Lewis means by this, because it's kind of a concept that we don't think about often, right? But he says, I feel a certain shyness, quote, I am almost committing an indecency. I am trying to rip open the inconsolable secret in each one of you. The secret which hurts so much that you take your revenge on it by calling it names like nostalgia and romanticism and adolescence. The secret also which pierces with such sweetness that when in an intimate conversation, the mention of it becomes imminent, we grow awkward and affect to laugh at ourselves. The secret which we cannot hide and we cannot tell, though we desire to do both.
In our politics, as is often the case for illustrations, I think we have a really good example of this, where one time we had come up with the formula. Well, I had come up with it and you agreed. Conservatives are perpetually looking to the past and liberals are perpetually looking to the future. There's that drive towards what we don't have, but we believe we could. And we'll probably never have it or never have it again. But there's that need to keep striving for it anyways. Without that drive, we can't really function as human beings towards something.
You're hitting the nail on the head. And this is the next part of actually that chapter I just read that Lewis talks about. He talks about it. He talks about the progressives or the socialists in his day, and he says they feed off of this feeling, this desire is what feeds the socialist tendency, and they do two things to cast the spell, so to speak. Right. The first thing they do is they tell you very obviously that the world, that the utopia, doesn't exist. So it gives kind of a consolation to your soul by saying, it's still quite far off. And the second thing they do is put it just off of the horizon, something just out of reach, the utopia that if we do this, that, and the other thing, it will transpire. But we know that it will never transpire, right? So the thing that Lewis points out is if we did reach the utopia, each generation would lose it with death. And after the heat death of the universe, it won't be anything, not even a story forever and ever.
The Old Testament histories especially kind of talk about the cycle of sin and the way that every generation, it is extraordinarily difficult to pass on a legacy or to continue progress from generation to generation in almost anything, be it politics, be it the history of the church, be it national history, a company, anything. It is extremely difficult. And it fails much more often than it succeeds. And so, but everyone tries. Everyone who is a functional human being tries. And in the absence of God, in the absence of the kingdom of God, number one, we were talking about in a previous episode that you, as a Catholic, have that weird middle ground where you believe that the institution of the church will continue according to the promise of God. But what am I trying to say here? And I have only the promise of the advance of the gospel, which can get very tenuous, but I assume yours can too. Like very, very tenuous, nearly collapsing perhaps. But like Paul says, beat down but not crushed, persecuted but not abandoned. God in the Old Testament let it get down to a single child, the messianic line that the Queen Mother was going after, but it didn't end. And are you saying that desire, that the promises of God like that, whatever form you believe they take, is the thing that this is the legitimate object of the thing that secular people have to look for everywhere else, and they can never really pass it on, and it can never ultimately succeed, where in their own worldview is what you're saying, the heat death of the universe will ultimately bring all of this to an end inevitably from their own worldview.
Yes, and the last part of the paragraph is as if we could believe that any social or biological development on this planet will delay the senility of the sun or the second law of thermodynamics. So it's reaching for the eternal, but it's forever beyond our grasp. And probably the worst fit place to find it would be in politics, right? That's kind of the most grubby and baseless thing. But even in that personal sense, do you understand what I'm talking about? This, you know, there's a term for it. And Lewis says we kind of call it names. We call it nostalgia. We call it whenever it draws near to us, we start to blush, and that's the thing that when it begins to be spoken, it touches to the inmost core of our being, right? And it usually has to do with a wound. Someone who lost their parents very young and has only scant memories of them. When someone starts talking about the memories of the parent that had, you're getting close to the wound, of course, but the deep innate human desire to have one's parents, right? Or the person who is seeking love and romantic connection. It's that sense of intimate, deep desire that we all want. Now, that doesn't mean that we will, reach the object of that. But like Lewis says, it would be very strange in a sexless world to have a phenomenon such as falling in love.
An interesting example of this for me, I think, is childhood memories in general, but in particular, I think we all have our holiday memories.
No, and it's like Bilbo talking to Gandalf. He's like, I want to see mountains, Gandalf, mountains. It's exactly right. Just when you think about the Christmases, you just have to go like, oh, there's something there that pierces to the depths of my soul, and that's what I want. That's what I want.
Right, and in that case, though, I would say, well, that's why Christmas music in the West, or maybe America more than Europe these days, has that magical power to the degree that atheists celebrate Christmas. It's secularized. It's become a happy holidays versus Merry Christmas has literally become a part of the culture wars,
right?
Which is how ridiculous our society has become. But it's a thing where the sentimentality and the experience, and I think and for most people, it ties into the fact that when we form these memories and have these experiences, we're children. And so it's a time when we believe, when a lot of us still, maybe this is changing now that kids are being raised without a belief in God. But I'm assuming for you, definitely for me, growing up with my childhood memories, I believed that in Jesus being the reason for the season, quote unquote, as corny as that may sound, it was true. And I even believed that Santa Claus was real. But at an age when you could believe those things. So all the memories get connected to all the objects that you put up. Like that when you get those presents on Sunday morning, you actually believe Santa Claus came into your house and personally delivered them. That's magical.
And it's like I was saying, it's more of a visceral feeling than an actual thing that can be quantified and make known. But I think we all have this gaping wound at the center of our being that's calling out for something to fill the deepest desires of our hearts.